with only 96 days remaining until the 2010 midterm elections, one of the most powerful Democrats in Congress has been charged with 13 counts of ethics violations.
For Democrats, it's lose-lose.
Sean, the last thing they want, the last thing they can afford to have is a protracted public display of what Charlie Rangel's personal finances and his ethical problems really are.
Republicans got to be enjoying this, right?
Look, these were very serious charges. I mean, 13 different counts. If this happens in September, this is not good for Democrats.
That was a little preview of what's to come this election cycle. If all that undisguised giddiness is any indication, you'd expect to see Republicans far and wide spending campaign 2010 running against New York Congressman Charlie Rangel and his 13 alleged ethics violations. In the Rangel case, if the Rangel case goes to trial in the House, it'll happen in the fall, right before the election. Not exactly ideal timing for the Democrats. As we noted on this show last night, ethics violations are serious business. But if you want to talk election year political scandal, I'll see your Charlie Rangel Health Ethics Committee trial and raise you a John Ensign sex and lobbyist federal grand jury investigation. For those of you keeping track at home, the John Ensign sex and lobbyist scandal started last June when the Nevada Republican admitted having had an affair with Cindy Hampton, one of his campaign staffers who just so happened to be married to one of his top Senate staffers, Doug Hampton. When the affair ended, Ensign's parents cut the Hamptons a $96,000 check. And then, here's the part that got the FBI's attention. Senator Ensign himself allegedly helped Doug Hampton, his former aide and the husband of his one-time mistress, get a job as a lobbyist, which is actually against the law. You're not allowed to lobby the government immediately after leaving it. The scandal might not have started in election year, but has become an election year scandal by virtue of its staying power. Tonight, there are new developments in the year-old scandal. Because late last night, the Senate passed a resolution that will allow staffers from Senator Ensign's office to testify in front of the grand jury that's investigating him. That's important news, or if you're John Ensign, probably bad news, because there's another John Ensign investigation going on in the Senate Ethics Committee. Senator Ensign staffers have already reportedly testified there. And what did they say? According to reporting from the Hill newspaper last month, quote, staffers for Senator John Ensign have said the Nevada Republican and his senior aides knew a one-year lobbying ban was being broken when they helped a former staffer set up a short-lived career on K Street. Staffers told Senate ethics investigators that several aides in the office openly discussed Douglas Hampton's lobbying job and the one-year revolving door ban it appeared to violate. So the staffers who have already reportedly given damning testimony about Senator Ensign to the Ethics Committee are now free to give the same damning testimony to the grand jury. And it's not just Senator Ensign's staff spilling the beans. Just last week, we learned that his good friend, Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, has turned over 1,200 pages of Ensign-related documents to the Department of Justice to aid in its investigation of Senator Ensign. Coburn was among Senator Ensign's roommates at the C Street house, reportedly helped negotiate a financial settlement for the Hamptons once the affair ended. So, if Charlie Rangel's ethics case is going to make things difficult for Democrats this election season, I wonder what John Ensign's criminal probe is going to do for Republicans. Joining us now is the Washington Monthly's Steve Bennon, who wrote today about the two scandals. Steve, it's nice to see you.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to see you.
All right, so you wrote about those two scandals today in a blog post up at the Washington Monthly. And you pretty much asked, why is the Rangel scandal getting so much more attention than the Ensign scandal? You asked the question, now I'm going to make you answer it. Why is it getting so much more attention?
It's puzzling, isn't it? You know, when you think about it, Ensign seems to have all of the elements that one would look for in a feeding frenzy. You know, we have a family values conservative Republican caught up in a sex scandal. Then we've got corruption and lobbyists and hush money. Under those circumstances, given that it's a sitting senator, it's tempting to think the media would be all over this. This would be, you'd have reporters staked out in front of his house. You'd have editorials about him resigning, and yet none of that's actually happening. Most of the attention is focused on Rangel and before this, former Congressman Massa. And so it does raise the question, well, of course, why is that? One of the things I see a lot from the left is this rule called IOK, YAR, yes, which of course stands for it's okay if you're a Republican. And I know it's a cliche, but at a certain level, it seems kind of credible here. It seems that once you kind of weigh the various factors of the two scandals, one's the ethics investigation of Rangel is a huge story. The criminal investigation of a Republican senator is not. It makes you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I will even say that I have been following the story, I think, largely through this show. and the fact that it's a grand jury investigation has really gotten buried. Let me propose an alternate theory here, which is that the reason there's a difference is because Republicans have actually done a better job banging on Charlie Rangel and his problems than Democrats have done on John Ensign. Do you think that's the case? I mean, I hardly ever see Democratic politicians mentioning this.
That's an excellent point. I think that when you look at the two, we have both Democrats and Republicans criticizing Rangel. In the case of Democrats trying to distance themselves, in the case of Republicans trying to exploit it. When it comes to Ensign's scandal, not only is the media generally avoiding this story, but at the same time, Democrats in the Senate are also avoiding it. I think, though, that might change. I think that as Rangel becomes more central to the Republican election strategy, Democrats realize they have a trump card. If you want to talk about Rangel, they'll say, well, we can talk about Ensign and we can talk about Senator David Vitter of Louisiana, who, of course, was caught recently with prostitutes.
Okay, so finally, I want to ask you about the other big development in the Ensign scandal, Tom Coburn's decision to turn over all those emails. Last year, when his role in the affair was first made public, he said he was not going to talk at all because he was, quote, counseling Senator Ensign as a physician, as an ordained deacon, and it's privileged communication. He's not going to tell anyone. Of course, Senator Coburn is a OBGYN, so that sort of raised weird questions about what exactly that physician relationship was. So what do you think? Do you think that spells trouble for Ensign, the fact that Coburn is now talking?
I think it does. I think that's a potential problem. One of the things that Ensign has to count on is complete and unanimous support from his Republican colleagues. The fact that Coburn initially balked at the idea of trying to cooperate, which both defied common sense and anatomy, I guess. Once you get past that and Coburn says he wants to actually cooperate, you get to a situation where it's conceivable that those emails and those materials that were turned over to federal investigators are potentially damaging. And so that's a key development in this, the fact that Coburn is willing to cooperate with investigators. And I think that probably makes Ensign awfully nervous at this point.
Yeah, I imagine if we see a grand jury indictment, it'll be a big story. Steve Bennett of the Washington Monthly, thanks so much.
The key.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Chris.
Republicans are in slash and burn mode over the deficit. We must slash these wasteful programs that don't stimulate the economy, like food stamps? Really? That people buy food with? That's next.